Okay, so my talk is called Shape Up Experiments for a Scrum Team. First of all, guten Tag. I'm not from the UK. I'm from Berlin in Germany. In the past, I started 2 startups directly after studying software engineering, and I sold them. Nowadays, I call myself an independent CTO, so I'm doing interim gigs, consulting other CTOs, and building new teams from scratch to hand them over later on. Today, I'm talking about the Shape Up methodology. First of all, I want to give some context why we choose it for my current project, some insights from my Agile and Scrum filter bubble. Then next, I will explain Shape Up by the book, like a theory part, and then I will show some practice examples from the real world from the current team. Let's start with Scrum, State of the Union. Like this AI-generated picture of a Scrum in the real world, the current reality of most software engineers with Scrum is a little bit messed up. And I could rant about this for hours, about the current state of Scrum, but since this is a lightning talk, I'm forced to be brief here. Let's start with a quote from Andy Hunt. Probably most of you know him. He once said in the conference in 2017, Agile now means we do half of Scrum poorly and using Jira. So maybe this resonates with you. Other problem out of my filter bubble, somebody created this amazing graph here. Basically, he said Agile is leading to efficiency because we have the need to do roadmaps for the external stakeholders, and the need for efficiency is causing that everybody is working on its own, and then you end up with different development and product organizations. And at the end, product is 2 sprints ahead, design is 1 sprint ahead, and developers are 1 sprint behind. And then you have a lot of small waterfalls that also have to be coordinated. And the problem in all of this is that the team is not solving problems together, but instead optimizing towards a roadmap and just having a lot of bureaucracy for the Scrum. One could call Scrum also a paper shredder because somebody in the product department have an idea for a good product feature, and then he painted all the details of this product, and in the end, somebody needs to create all the tickets, and then the developers are picking up the tickets one by one, and they need to puzzle it back together. And as every puzzle, it's not as good as an original at the end. And also the thing is that the developers here need to do the trade-offs, and the trade-offs are maybe not in sync with what the product initially had in their mind. So there's a method called ShapeUp. It's from a company called Basecamp. They're also responsible for the Ruby on Rails framework. And in the last couple of years, they opened up even more, and they talked a little bit about their product development method. And this is now a brief overview from the book. So we're in the theory part here. Basically, they say you have a raw idea or request from a customer, and then you shape it just a little bit. So you don't develop 30 screens in Figma or something. You just shape it a little bit. And while you're shaping it, you gather feedback from developers and designers before you pour too much concrete into it. And then if you have a shaped pitch, you take a bet that you want to develop this pitch, and then the team responsible is developing the ideas, and they have organized themselves while they are doing it. So you don't do the UX and then the UI and then the development work, each separate. You really just shape it a bit, and then you hand it over to the team implementing it. The ShapeUp is working with 6-week cycles instead of 2 weeks than compared to most Scrum setups. And basically, you have people inside of the cycle, that's the spelling, and they are building the feature during the 6 weeks. And also you have people outside of the cycle. This is probably the product department or the executives shaping the work for the next cycle. In between these cycles, you have 2 weeks of cool down phase where developers can do bug fixing and work on the architecture. And the product people, together with the senior engineering leaders, are doing then the betting in this phase. And they bet what to do in the next sprint. One other important concept of ShapeUp is the so-called appetite. So normally, when you're doing Scrum, you estimate things. Estimates most of the time work with a fixed scope, and then you have a variable time because you need to say how long something takes. With an appetite, the whole thing is a little bit different. Your time is fixed, but you can end up with a variable scope. But this only works if you develop the concept with this shaping method, because you're not flexible if you poured too much concrete too early on. You need the pitch very rough, but with input from everybody that this method is working. It's also a communication technique, because if the business is saying we want to spend 6 weeks on this feature because we want to invest 6 weeks of resources, then the engineers can say, yes, but to do this in 6 weeks, we need to do those trade-offs. Also, it's a strategic and a business decision how much resources you want to spend for a certain feature. So with ShapeUp, it's not how long do we think it will take, it's rather how much do we want to spend. But this concept needs focused autonomous teams. Basically, it's like in the early days, if one of you ever founded a startup, everybody working very closely together. But this method brings this into a process. You have 2 to 3 people together in the same context throughout the time box, and they are fully responsible and self-managed. Most of the time, this is probably 2 engineers and 1 designer, but it can vary. It can only be just 2 engineers if it's a technical feature. For the actual shaping, it's important that the pitch is on the right altitude, how it's called. So wireframes are already too concrete and words are too abstract. So you want to have something in the middle that's shaped on the right altitude. Because if not, then it's either undershaped with too many unanswered questions, and then the project stalls and the team cannot use the whole time to build it. And if it's overshaped, it's too detailed already. Then for the shaping process, you write a pitch, and basically the pitch is a guide to the building team. You have your problem statement, you have some strategic context there, you explicitly state your appetite, how long you want to invest to solve this problem. Then you come up with the solution, with a raw solution. When you already see some rabbit holes that could be there, then you state them out and how to navigate around them. You also state no-goes, what is not to be done. This is a rough example from the book. It's an original pitch from Basecamp. And here you see at the beginning the problem statement, what is wrong with their current implementation of to-do lists. And then you have like a mixture of fat marker sketches and some text to explain what should be done. But as you see, it's not a level of wireframes, because wireframe would be too concrete. And then the implementing team of, in this case, probably 2 developers and 1 designer, have too less wiggle room that the work fits in the time box. If you have 1 or more pitches, you think you can go to a betting table, because in the ShapeUp method in the book, you don't have you don't manage your backlog, because Basecamp 37 Signals, they are saying important ideas come back. So you don't plan for the whole year in advance. You just think what is important now for the next 6 weeks. And then you have maybe different pitches, and then you can decide what is most important. The actual building phase, it's also a little bit different because the team needs to organize themselves. But the only way to really figure out what needs to be done is to start doing real work. So in reality, there's a kickoff meeting where everybody that was involved in the pitch and all of the builders inside of the cycle are coming together, talking about the pitch. And then the team starts working on it. It's important that you start at the epicenter. You don't start with account registration or something like this. You really start with what's important. It's also important to state programmers don't need to wait before the first design is ready. And also done means deployed. You have no additional testing cycle or something like this. And most of the times you start very unscoped. Everybody is doing what he or she can do. So developers looking at what components can be reused, designers looking at the bigger picture. They are making the design maybe for the whole page, like how it should look like. And then piece by piece, stuff is coming together. And it's important that after the first or 2 weeks, you really start thinking of a mindset of one slice at a time. So if you only prepare some parts of the front end and you have nothing in the back end, nothing works. If you prepare some parts of the front end, but other parts of the back end, also nothing works. It's very important that you work for the most time of the sprint at the same thing at a time. Now, a little bit of our real-world experience implementing it for a working Scrum team. This is the product. It's called Hydro Pocket. It's from a company called Voigt. The company produces hydro power plants, amongst other. And we have a product for everybody who owns a power plant to have KPIs and everything to their need in their pocket. The team, we only built the front end. It's based on a lot of microservices already there. It's a progressive web app, and we have 4 software engineers, full stack. We have 2 UX, 2 UI, 1 PO. Before we started this experiment, we were working together for well above a year in this exact constellation. And as before, the PO decides the focus of the next couple of sprints and also the feature that we wanted to work in ShapeUp. So this was our working mode with Scrum. Everything was optimized for the engineers. So UX needs to prepare the wireframes, then UI needs to do the designs, and everybody is optimizing towards a situation that the developers are not blocked. But yeah, it's not, you have a lot of small waterfalls if you do this for a whole year. And compared with ShapeUp, it's a little bit different. In ShapeUp, you have, the shaping in our case was led by the UX designer. She was inspiring with the PO and also with the actual builders to come up with a pitch that is feasible to be done in 6 weeks. And during this 6 weeks, most of the time, the builders worked on their own while just be inspiring with the UX. And in this situation, you have much less sparring needed from the product owner, and he can go back to the actual work of strategic business decisions rather than micromanaging tickets for developers. We did, until now, we did 2 cycles of ShapeUp in parallel to our Scrum track, and we had 4 weeks of cooldown in between. The builders organized themselves, so they had then no Scrum obligations except for the review. We decided that we show our intermediate state also at the review together with the rest of the Scrum team. They are doing mostly asynchronous work, but sharing their work immediately in Slack in our case. For organization, we had an extended daily, and it was 60 to 90 minutes. This sounds a lot, but if you have the rest of the day for actual work, then it's really okay. And during this extended daily, everybody also showed a little bit of progress, showed where he or she had questions. And then because of this mindset of one slice at a time, we really could discuss things and really make decisions without constant context switching as compared to the normal Scrum mode, where you work on something different while somebody else is preparing the next thing. You could call it that the builders are forming a temporary squad when you talk with the Spotify model, while they are still in exchange with the rest of their guild to ensure the bigger picture of our product. In our case, we had the developers had a bi-weekly meeting, and the designers, UX and UI, had a weekly meeting to discuss things. That's not just for our current feature that they were developing. And also the communication for the other part of the Scrum teams was much more efficient because refinement and backlog grooming sessions were much faster if only the people present that are relevant for the current thing. What's next? The team now after the finishing of the second cycle decides on its future process. Maybe quickly the bigger picture. This is an agile method like the manifesto imagined it. So you have individuals and those autonomous teams. You have working software. If you work slice-based, designers and developers together, you have collaboration among product and engineering, and you can really respond to change if you don't have a roadmap, but just work 6 weeks on finished things. Important to state, ShapeUp is for features. Reactive work needs separate dedicated capacity. It's also not for cross-party integrations with dependencies. This is important to state. Other methods are probably better. Reasons to use ShapeUp, either to scale up your organization because you can run multiple parallel product teams. And if the UX and PO are not so involved in the day-to-day work, they can really do a better shaping work. But also if your organization is slowing down, you can get back to be focused in a small team like in the early days and just move things fast. You can start with a 6-week experiment like we did, but you can also start with the larger cycles, but you can also start with just the shaping in the product department. In a nutshell, hack your process. You can experiment with Scrum while not ditching Scrum completely. You should think in bets, not in year-long roadmaps. Think with appetite, fixed time, variable scope, small autonomous teams. Start at the epicenter, one slide.